All right, fabulous, guys. Good morning and good afternoon if you happen to be anywhere where it's afternoon, and we'll get started. So today we're going to cover AutoCAD data extraction and using the data extraction pieces inside of AutoCAD. And then at the very end, we'll do a recap of everything that I've done this year. And then I will also include some links to some relevant blogs, or not relevant blogs, relevant webcasts that we've done this year or last year pertaining to things like tables and block libraries, as well as where you can go to actually go through all of our webinars that we have. So those of you that are new here that don't know who I am, my name's Ryan Wunderlich. I've got over 39 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I'm currently a support team manager here at Imagineit for the AEC team. I've taught AutoCAD as a certified instructor. I've got over 15 years of CAD management experience, 8 years in cruise ship building, 5 years civil survey, landscape architecture before that. I've worked in mechanical, pretty much what I tell people, I've worked in everything but aerospace and automotive. So there's a good chance that if you have an oddball question, chances are I've worked in that field in some aspect, and I have ideas or I have thought processes that I can share. And I also have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So with that, two easy things today in our agenda. First is data extraction inside AutoCAD, and the second is the recap of our 2025 webinars. So today we'll get right into it and we'll start talking about AutoCAD data extraction. So what is data extraction? So data extraction inside AutoCAD is a powerful tool that allows you to automatically retrieve and present information from objects within specified drawings in a structured format such as a table or an external file. It essentially automates the process of counting stuff and collecting object properties, which traditionally would have to be done manually. So obviously with the count palette now, we can count block instances. With data extraction, we can go beyond just blocks, and we can actually get information out of those blocks. So the feature is managed by the data extraction wizard, which guides you through selecting the data to extract. So the extraction source, you can extract data from a single drawing, a set of drawings, an entire sheet set, and then target data. You can extract specific properties from any object. It's most commonly used for blocks and their associated attributes like part numbers, material sizes, etc. But it can also extract geometric properties like area or length. So your output options, when you have the extracted data and it does what you want, you can actually output it in two primary ways. You can create it as a dynamically linked table inserted directly into your AutoCAD drawing, or you can also export it out as an external file format like Microsoft Excel, a CSV, or a text file. So what this does is this gives you options to not only get the information and leave it in your drawing, but now you can create things like spreadsheets, take it into other sources, things like that by using the external file. So how does this differ from the counting blocks? This differs as it allows you to extract additional data than just the raw block name. And I see I have a misspell in here. Hang on just a second, we'll go fix that. And I'll fix that in the final. The block count palette, or the count palette, is focused on the count and provides limited information about blocks, properties, or attributes beyond the basic details like layer or scale. If you have attributes or visibility states in dynamic blocks, you can capture and consolidate that in the data extraction plus any additional data about geometry if you want. Data extraction also works on any AutoCAD entity just beyond just blocks. So if you want to count the number of circles that have a specific diameter or a radius or things like that, data extraction is what you can use. It's a very powerful tool that can help determine specific data in your drawing. So the data extraction process, we start in the Annotate tab, and then we select Extract Data button in the Tables panel, or you can type in Data Extraction to start the wizard. There's normally 8 pieces to the wizard. So the first one, page 1 of 8, asks, do we want to edit an existing data extraction? Do we want to start a brand new data extraction, and either use a blank data extraction where we have to redo everything, or use an existing one? So you can use an existing data extraction from a previous project and previous drawings to have it automatically know where you want to start. And then After clicking next here, it will bring up the file dialog to select or place the new DXEX for 2026 or DXE file for 2025 and older. So again, this goes back to the what's new in 2026, where they've changed the file extension for data extraction. It is forwards compatible, not backwards compatible. So if you are in 2026 and have saved the DXEX, you can't go back to 25 with it. And once we get to page 2, we select a drawing or a sheet set. We can select objects in the current drawing. We can choose the entire drawing to be counted. We can add an entire folder of drawings, or we can add specific drawings beyond the current one by either add folder or add drawings. And then in the settings button, we can make additional choices on what to process. Do we want to extract the objects from blocks, i.e. do we want to extract Lori, hold on, Lori, I'll get to you. In the settings button, we can make additional choices on what to process. So do we want to extract objects from blocks, extract objects from the XREF, include XREFs in the block counts? And then do we want to extract objects from model space or all objects in the drawing? And I believe that's going to answer your question, Lori, where it says, when doing this process, does it matter if you're in model or paper space? In theory, it doesn't matter where you start it. Typically, I always want to make sure I'm in model, because sometimes your viewport may not have everything in there, or if your viewport properties are set to freeze certain layers, those objects won't be picked up. So I prefer to do it in model space. So these settings determine, those settings right here determine, so extract objects from blocks. So this would include objects nested inside blocks, like other blocks or geometry. So if you have a circle inside of a block and you want to extract the data from that circle, you would need to have that top one checked, extract objects from blocks. Extract objects from XREFs. This would include all objects and blocks in externally referenced files. So if your file has XREFs in it and you want to count everything, including the XREFs, then you would want to make sure that that box is checked. Include XREFs in the block counts. Normally you want that unchecked, otherwise the XREF itself will count as a block. And then do you want to count objects in model space? This will include only those objects in model space and ignores objects in paper space. This is very useful if you're doing a count of blocks with attributes and you have a legend in paper space. This way it will ignore all of the blocks that are in your legend. And then count all objects in the drawing. This will count all objects in model space and paper space in the drawing, including drawing information, and then it's on by default. So if you only want to count the stuff in model space, please make sure that that is the button in the settings is set to objects in model space. When we get to page 3, this is where we drill down and find out what we want. We can select the object type, the block names, pretty much anything that's selected in the drawing. We can also filter the object list down at the bottom under the display options. So do we want to choose only blocks or non-blocks versus all object types? That's this one. So we can display all object types. I can do blocks only, or I can do non-blocks only. We can also display blocks with attributes only, or display objects currently in use. So if you have a block definition that's not been purged, so it's not in use, but it exists, it will show up in this block count with a count of 0. So I want to make sure about that. And that list can be quite large and cumbersome. So you can always right mouse click on one of those things and check all, uncheck all. You can invert selections. So if you have one thing checked or nothing checked and you want to check just the one, you can invert the selection, or you can edit the display name. So editing the display name is what it's going to show up in as the table. So this will say attribute definition for the object, but the display name could be, you know, you can leave it as attribute definition, you can save it as what you want, something else, if that makes better sense for you. Now we get to page 4. Once you've selected what objects, now we want to select what properties or data we want to extract. So all the relevant properties are displayed based on your selection on page 3. So on the right, again, we can turn categories off to simplify the list of going through. So if it doesn't have a 3D visualization, we can turn it off and you can see the categories are listed. So my face style ID here is a 3D visualization and edge style. If we don't want those, we can turn those off. We can turn off drawing, dynamic block, general, geometry, miscellaneous, and attributes, and we can see all of that information here. Makes this list a little easier to filter through. And again, same like the previous page, we can right mouse click on any object to check all, uncheck all, invert selection, or again, we have the option to edit the display name again. Then we go into next, and then we determine how we want the information to be displayed. So we can sort the column data. We can combine identical rows, which means those are additive counts. So anywhere where those things appear the same, you will now have an additive count of how many, right? So in the example you see here, I have 2 rectangular side table smalls, and you'll see there's 2 of those. You have 3 outlet singles, and you'll see that. And then we can show specific columns. Do we want the count column? Do we want the name column? Things like that. We can combine identical rows. We can sort them. We can also choose to link to an external data link. So if you already have a linked Excel spreadsheet, we can choose to also include that in here, provided that the existing data link has already been created in the drawing. And then when we get to here, we can decide how we want to output the data. So do we want to make a table, an AutoCAD table that's linked to the data extraction, the DXE or the DXEF or DXEX? And do we want to output the results as an external file? So that's the Excel, CSV, MDB, text, and we can choose to do one or both. If you choose not to do a table and just exporting to an external file, you will not get the next page. It'll just take you to the finish. If you do just the table or include the table and the output, it'll take you to the next page, which is where we talk about tables. So if we choose to make an AutoCAD table, we determine which table style we want to use and how it's set up. And once you get to the final screen to finish, click finish, and it will insert the table or finish exporting that file. With that, we've got a pretty practical application here. So this is something that I have done in the past. Any of you have ever been on a cruise ship, you know that there's a significant number of tables and chairs and sun loungers and things like that on each ship deck. So in here, just to give you an idea, not only do I have block references in here, but I want to show you that these block references have attributes that are hidden. So I have colors, I have which deck they're located on, and I have their exposure. This is the information that's critical or is important to us as we're setting these things up to understand, is this a, what color is this? So I know how many of this to order, how many decks, what deck this is on, so that when I am doing provisioning or I'm setting things up, I can say I need 15 blue chairs on deck 15, and I need 16 green chairs on deck 16, etc. And then we also know the exposure. So there are 4 normal exposures on a cruise ship. You have full sun, partial sun, partial shade, full shade. And those things relate back to how we handle certain things. That is a very good question. Is data extraction mostly used for bill of materials or counts? Is this mostly used for QC, QA? That is a very good question. Really, it comes down to, I've used it for both. I've used it for QA and QC. I've also used it for bill of materials and counts. I've also used it for nothing more to understand what I actually have and make sure that that number matches with what was ordered. That's the QA, QC part. That's a good question. So just to give you an idea, I've got information here. Things like, the tables here have just a deck and a color. They don't necessarily say partial sun or partial shade. They just have a deck and a color. So all of this information is here. So again, we start with the annotate tab and we go to extract data. That starts that wizard. We're going to start a brand new one. Now I don't have an XREF in here right now, but I will show you what that looks like when we add the XREF. So we're going to create a new data extraction. And I'm going to say, we're going to save this into my webinar. And this is going to be chair counts. And actually, I'm going to do this, chair counts. And you'll see when I come here, it automatically picks the current drawing I'm in. If I wanted to add an additional drawing, I could do this. If you start with an existing, you'll need to remove the drawing that it's pointed to and then add the current drawing. I could select just a window, and this is where I'm going to go into settings, and I'm only going to pick objects in model space, but I am going to allow things to extract objects from block and extract objects from XREFs. I'm going to include the current drawing, and I'm going to go next, and then you're going to see it comes up with all of this. So I'm going to do some filtering here. So I want to display just blocks. And I'm going to display the blocks that are in use. And you're going to see here is all of the blocks I have in here. So I have a bar stool, a couch, sunbed, a 4-top 1, a 4-top 2, a 4-top square. Lounger, LSA, this is life-saving appliance. This is a 2-door cabinet, single outlet. That's a dynamic block that has some visibility states. I've got plants, things like that. So when I go to next, now I can choose which properties I want to look at. So maybe I don't want to see necessarily angles, authors, things like that. So I don't need 3D visualization. I don't need drawing. And I'm looking at, I don't need general and I don't need geometry. So these are the things that I do care about. I do care about some of these attributes. So I'm going to uncheck all of these, and I want to know what color, what deck and exposure those are on that have, what side those are on, and I want to see the visibility state for the dynamic blocks. Now, again, I could pick other things in here depending on what I want to see. So Andre made a very good point here. So data extraction is only usable when drafters and designers have good standards. Let's say drafters explode blocks or don't spend the time to add the attributes. If the drafters and designers don't maintain standards, is data extraction unusable? It's not necessarily unusable. You're just not going to get accurate counts, but then that's going to expose some of the things that you may need to look at. There are some tools now that we have in the newer versions of AutoCAD where you can have it do a block detection. So if somebody has exploded a block, it will show you that some blocks have been exploded, and then you can put those back into blocks and basically return them to the block definition you expect, and then you can do the data extraction. But the data extraction at its core needs to have a good set of common standards and a good set of common blocks that have common items that we all expect to use. From here, we're going to now, and actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to include, let's go back because I can always go back. I am not going to do my outlet singles because I can do multiple data extractions for the same file. Now, when I go next, you'll see that I only have deck, color, exposure, and side. So that visibility state disappears because there's no dynamic blocks with visibility states. Then I'll go next. And this is going to show me exactly where things show up. So I have one LSA 2-door cabinet on deck 16. It doesn't have a color associated to it, but I do have the side that it's on. So this is on a starboard side, port, starboard, midships, port, things like that. So these are attributes that are in that block. I also have exposure in the sun loungers. I know which deck they're on, and I know what counts they're on. So in my case, I really am happy with this. If I didn't want to show a name column, I can do that and it would disappear. If I don't want to combine identical rows, it'll show everything as an individual. So when I combine them, then I get the count. Then I go next. Now, what do I want to do? I can insert this as a data extraction table into the drawing, and I can also output this here. And I will output this as a Excel spreadsheet so we can get the same information. And I go next. It's going to say, what do I want to use? I've created a data extraction table style. For those of you that missed my October webinar, I will include a link in our chat for that. Talks about all about tables. And then we can use the property names here. And when I click next, it's going to say finish. And where do I want to put that table? And here's the table. So now I have a table in here that shows all of my information. So I know I have 29 square side tables for the sun sleepers that are gray, and I have 31 sun sleeper square side tables that are natural. Those are all on deck 16. I have 26 sun loungers that are red on deck 15 that are in full sun, so on and so forth. You see that, and I forgot to take plant 2 off. So plant 2, since it has no attributes, shows up incorrectly here. So this is where we can go back into our extract data. We're going to edit our existing, and then I'm going to go in and take that one out. Right, and I can always come back in and edit these. And I think I missed plant 1, plant 2. Next, 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 next. Finish. There. Now I can erase this one. You'll see that plant disappears. So I've got a good amount of information in here. I can use this. You'll also see if I go open up that Excel spreadsheet that all of that same data is in that same spreadsheet now. Right? Same data, same information. So now I could send this off to somebody that says, all right, I have 6 sun loungers that are blue in partial sun on deck 15, etc. Would it be easier, faster to delete the row in the table itself, or does it not allow you to do that? Because this table is dynamically linked to that data extraction, we have to go in and modify the data extraction. So yes, we could alter the table. As soon as we alter the table, close, reopen the drawing, it's going to tell you the data link has changed, and then we update the tables using this, and then that row is going to immediately come back. So you're going to want to be careful of that. If I can do this again with a second one, I'm going to create a new one, and this one is going to be outlet count. Right, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're only going to display objects. I'm only going to do blocks. I'm going to uncheck all, and I'm only going to grab my outlet singles for this one. And I'm going to do that to filter it, and I'm going to uncheck all of those, and I'm only going to be looking at my blocks in the visibility state. And you'll see that I have visibility states for these dynamic blocks in here. So I can see that the block name is outlet single, but I can also come in here and I see I have 3 of these as a 13 amp single switched outlet, and the rest of these. And in this particular case, I'm just going to insert a table. Finish. So I can see that this is one outlet single is the block name, and then I have one of these as a single switched outlet, just like this. So these are the 3. This is the 1, the 1, the 1. And if I change one of these, because I can change this to a single switched outlet, I can come back in here and I can update table data links, and now you'll see my counts change. If I clone this, right? So let's just say I make a simple copy of this. I'll make 2 copies, so a total of 3. And again, I just come back to my data link table, update the table links. These numbers update. That simple. Now what happens when I bring in the next ref? I can attach a drawing and come back to here, and you'll see I have this one. For clarity of purpose, that's essentially the same thing. All I did was change all the decks. But I left everything the same. Now when I come in here and I update the table links, nothing changed because now I have to come back in and re-edit my data link table. Now I have to come back in here. Right, I have to come back in here and I have to do my data extraction. I have to edit. My chair counts, go next, go next. Now you'll see that I have the additional ones here. So now I can go in here, I can check all, right? And we gotta pull those 4 plants again. Next, it remembers everything I did previous, next. And now you're gonna see that these numbers get bigger, and then I can rewrite over my data extraction in Excel. Gotta make sure I close that. Next, next, finish. And then I can erase that. Now we see that as soon as I added the XREF and went back through the edit, now I'm picking up everything. So not only do I have deck 15 and 16, now I have my XREF from 17 and 18 because I told it to include those. All right, this is very useful for drainage systems, topography. Visual state blocks is something I'll have to incorporate. Is there a webinar or SOP for visual states and dynamic blocks? I have not done one yet, but I can definitely put that on my list of dynamic blocks, and or I can put that on my list of webinars, and I can do one in the future on understanding dynamic blocks and how to set visibility states. There's a lot of good information from AU classes. If you've not signed up for Autodesk University, or at least have an Autodesk account where you can go look at previous classes, there's quite a few people who have done some really good stuff about dynamic blocks. They've been around for a long time. I don't particularly like to use them because when I just do raw block counts, they don't come up, right? So if I just do a simple count, right, it's going to show me that I have these outlet singles. Oh, actually it is doing it now. This is 26, so it is actually picking up the different visibility states. So now I can create a table with just those if I was curious. Right. So these are the visibility states of those blocks using the count palette. Usually what I'm using data extraction for is to get my properties out of this. This is what I care about, is I need to know colors, I need to know deck, exposure, side, things that I put into those attributes, because you can't get a lot of that attribute data out of that count palette, right? So let's go back to count. So let's go back to count. I have a bar stool, I have dual sun beds, I have 4 tops. It's going to show me those 4 tops, but you'll see I don't have any attribute data. So I don't know what attributes are included in there. So I can't tell you what deck they're on, what color they're on, anything like that. This is where the count table or the count palette doesn't do the job I need it to do, where data extraction can get there. Any other questions? If you can imagine a cruise ship that has 5,000 deck chairs on it, trying to keep track of colors and sizes and exposure and things like that by a hand count takes hours. Data extraction, as long as you are maintaining the information and the integrity for those either hidden attributes or even something as simple as just a block name, you can get this information out very quickly. And that's what I've used it for in the past. So it's more of an exercise in understanding what do you need, what can you get out of a data extraction, understanding what would you need to change ahead of time in order to get there and make this a very easy process. Questions? Any other questions? All right. Go into a recap of this year's AutoCAD webinars that I've done. So we started off in February of 2025, the tips and tricks. So common install licensing issues, some of the things to help speed up AutoCAD, drawing maintenance and cleanup, and other common problems that can be fixed easily. In April, I did What's New in AutoCAD 2026. This included the new features, connected support files in ACC, the enhanced features of markup activity inside smart blocks, and system enhancements. Andre, you mentioned AutoCAD has a tool to show exploded blocks. Can you show us that tool? That's actually in that April webinar. Smart blocks, where you can have it go through and find things. I'll put links for that in there. June, we did a live with Ryan. Basically, it was two pieces to that. One was the basics of converting imperial to metric and vice versa overview process, things to watch out for, and why things don't work the way you expect, followed by an ask any question. In October, we talked all about AutoCAD tables, so table styles, linking to Excel, things to know, and where things go wrong and why. And then we're in December, where we talked about the data extraction and the recap of this year's webinars. So for those that were curious, I'm putting this in the full chat for everyone. I've got 4 links there. So one of the links I talked about, or one of the things I did last year, was block libraries. So an understanding of block libraries and making them work for you, and the different methods you can use to have block libraries and retrieve them. I talked about Design Center, block palette, tool palettes. Then there's the working with tables, which goes through how to set up a table style that works, things like that. If you are curious, any other webcast we've done, that's the next one, where you can go to imagineit.com and go through all of our videos and see things. And then we also have our YouTube channel. So I got a question: can I use data extraction in industrial piping or process design? That's a good question. Is that information blocks? What are you wanting to get out of your industrial piping and process design? As long as it's an AutoCAD entity with some type of data, chances are you could use data extraction to find out how many elbows, how many T's, linear lengths of pipe, assuming that it's 2D, or linear length if it is 3D. All right, is there any way to update block attributes across an entire directory by importing data from an Excel spreadsheet, essentially making data extraction bi-directional? That is a good question. Short answer is there's nothing built into AutoCAD to do that. Long answer is there probably is some custom coding out there where you could potentially do that with a Lisp routine, where you'd need to open up the Excel file, create things, or create a CSV from it, have it query that data, understand what block it is you want to update with that data, and have it go through that. But there's nothing directly inside of AutoCAD to do that. And does data extraction work in Civil 3D and Advanced Steel? Yes, data extraction can work in those. Again, it all comes down to what type of objects do you have, and can the data extraction wizard read them? I'm not sure how far they'll go. I've not used data extraction extensively in Civil 3D, but I have used it in there. I don't remember if it's picked up pressure pipes or any of the AEC specific type of objects. It'd be worth going through and just playing around and seeing if you can. I'm not sure with Advanced Steel that you're going to get much out of it, because so much of Advanced Steel is being driven by SQL and the SQL components. So I don't know that you're getting an accurate visual. I think you're getting a visual representation of the data, but there's no hard data in it. but that would be worth checking. Questions? All right, so this is Q&A time, and before we get into the Q&A, I do have 2 polls that I want to run. The first one is, which day works better for you? I've now opened the poll. Is Friday better, or is Thursday a better day for you? We used to do these on Thursdays, and then we moved them to Fridays. And so I'm just I want to gauge if we want to keep them on Fridays going into 2026, or if we want to move them back to Thursdays. All right, I've got about 68% voted at this point. Keep the poll open for probably another 30, 40 seconds or so. You know, some people, depending on your company and work, you may not be working full days on Fridays. You may work half days on Fridays or every other Friday, things like that. So that was one of the things that I just wanted to clarify is, you know, how does everybody feel about Fridays? We are, Fridays are gold mining days in the summer. All right, we got 76% of the people voted, and I'm going to close that poll here in about 4, 3, 2, 1, closed. All right, so we'll keep it on Fridays. Now the next time, or now what I'm curious is, which time works best for you guys? Do you like 11 a.m. Eastern? Would you prefer 1 p.m. Eastern? Brandon, next time, if I ask this poll again, I will make sure to put an option for either. All right, that one seems pretty legitimate that we're going to keep it at 11 a.m. on Fridays. That's easy. And the response is overwhelming, so I'm going to close that one here. We'll close that one here in just a few seconds. All right, we'll close that one. And I think it was Andre, you were talking about the blocks. So let's go back to the drawing. I believe I still have that drawing. So let's go back to data, webinar, old I had. In here. I might have got rid of that drawing. Smart blocks. Yeah, we'll open up that one. Okay, so you're going to see that this is all just CAD geometry. And we go, when we start the command with detect, it's going to, so this is actually, it's not detect. I want search. I didn't want that. I want search. So in here, I can do search, and I can grab a piece of geometry, and it can now locate all of the similar pieces of geometry in this drawing, and then I can convert those into a block. So if these have been exploded, now if I had an existing block already in this drawing, I can choose that existing block and it will replace this with these existing blocks, or I can create a brand new block definition. And there's no attributes associated with it. but if someone has exploded blocks, that's what we'd use. So that's the search tool in 26, and it does exist in 25. It is more functional in 26. Any questions? Any other questions? Quiet crowd. If I have a renovation, can I show the blocks in 2 different colors and the table as well, showing what is existing and what is new? Now that is an excellent question. So if your block definition, so these blocks are all on a different layer, right? Or these are all on a blocks layer. So let's say I create a brand new layer, and I'm going to call this existing. Okay, and then I'm going to move this group to the existing layer. Okay. In theory now with data extraction, I'm going to use, actually I'm going to create a new one for just this. All right, we're going to include the current drawing. We're going to do that. I'm going to just do the blocks again. I'm going to uncheck all, and all I want is dual sunbeds, because that's what these are, the dual sunbeds, and I believe these are remember if those are these or those. Actually, we'll just ignore those. Now I can come in here and I can uncheck all, and I'm going to go color, deck, and exposure. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to find the layer. When I go to next, now I'll see that there's sunbeds, and now I can see if they're on the existing layer or the blocks layer. That would be the way to do it. As long as those blocks are on different layers, you can use the exact same block definition, and you could use this to tell you what layer those are on, which would then give you counts based off of how many are how many are existing and how many are new. That would be the way to do that. That is an excellent question, and that is another good reason why I use this. Right, and if I click through this and I just make a table, finish, and obviously what I'm going to see here is, right, I've got these sunbeds here that are on the existing layer, these sunbeds here and their count are on the blocks layer, which would be the new one. It's also counting the XREF because I didn't take out the XREFs here. So it's counting the XREF one. So if I change the XREF, if I went in and changed a bunch of these to the existing layer, it would then redo the table when I update. You rename the header from layer to status and then change the layer to proposed or existing. Yes. So this header where it says layer, we can absolutely change this, so we can change it actually back in the data extraction. Let's go back and modify our data extraction. Existing, oh, cancel, I want to edit an existing. We'll grab that existing, next, next, next. Right here where it says layer. I can change the display name. So edit the display name, and I want to have this say, if I change this to status for the layer, and you'll see that instead of layer now, it shows status as the header. Next, 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 finish. And boom, now it says status. So again, we can control what we have for the headers here. If you don't need a title row, you can put that in. The title row is always put into the table, and then you can put whatever you want here for a title, and it doesn't change when you update the data extraction. I see some gears turning on things that maybe we could do with this that you might like. Can you edit the data extraction if you've only made an AutoCAD table and did not make an external file? Yes. So that goes back to this one. I did not make a table, or I did not export this out. I simply dropped it in here as an AutoCAD table. There's no Excel spreadsheet for this. Good questions, guys. Good questions. With that one, because we don't need that table anymore. But like this one, if we go and edit this data extraction, right? So we edit that one, because that one was just our outlet count. You'll see when I click through it, I only extracted that as a table. There's no external file associated with it. So there's no Excel spreadsheet. I just keep it in here. So every time I change the number of these or anything like that, can you tell if a table is extracted to an external file? Okay, so if I'm creating a data extraction table in my drawing and an external file, this table is not tied to that external file. That external file is simply a snapshot in time. This table is what is really the live data. So if you need to update your Excel spreadsheet, you need to go back through the data extraction and update everything. Just like I did, you go to this, you edit an existing, you click all the way through, then it will update the table, or it will update your Excel. But you will see here, when I click on the table, you'll see that when I get into a cell, you'll see that there is a link there. The crosshairs, which tell me this table is linked, and it will actually tell me that this is created from data extraction outlet count. So it's not linked to an Excel data file, it's linked to that DXEX or DXE file, which is what's driving this table. Same with this. If I click on this table here and hover, you'll see this is a data extraction, as opposed to an Excel table. When you come here, and it will say it's a data link, not a data extraction. Why is the title row empty? How would you specify the table title? The title row is empty because that is the default, because there is no place to put a title inside the data extraction. So this is where you have to manually put one in. Once you put it in, that title will never go away. It's a manual title. Or if you don't want the title, you just simply remove the title row from the table style and it won't put a title in. But because our table style, and again, this is what I covered in the October one. So you'll see that I have style, data header, and title here. And there is a method to manage cell styles. If I don't want a title, I should be able to remove the title, or I can change that. But normally you'll always have a title in a table, and it's just a matter of removing it. So that's the one thing that data extraction doesn't do, is that it doesn't put in title, but it does all the rest of these, your headers and your data rows. You create a spreadsheet file in Access, or is it just Excel? Well, Access is not a spreadsheet, it's a database. So you can do a data extraction and go to an MDB for database. You can also do CSV. You can also do just a straight text file. Really, it comes down to MDBs or Access databases are more difficult to manipulate and get data out of unless you are really good with it. Excel, everyone seems to understand Excel fairly well. If you create the spreadsheet, you can always import that directly into Access. Just need to make sure you have the correct rows or correct data header columns. Got a little over 5 minutes left. Any more questions? Keep coming. This recording be publicly available? Yes, absolutely it will. As Lori said, this will go live on our Imagine It website. That's the third link that I put in our chat to everyone. It should be live on there Monday, Tuesday next week. Might be a little longer depending, but usually it'll be live there within a couple of days. And Lori just responded, does it do counts based on object layers? It can do counts based on object layers if you specify that you want the layer to be included in this count. Like I did here, I said the status was layers. If I'd not included layers, it would have consolidated this blue one here with this blue one here, because it's only counting the data and consolidating based on the parameters that you've applied. If I take the layer off, this table would shrink by 3 rows because it would get rid of, actually it would shrink by 3 rows because it would get rid of these 3. I don't remember who had asked for data extraction, but whoever it was that asked during my tables one, thank you. This was a fun one to put together. All right, I think we're at a good spot. So from all of us here at Imagine It, I just wanted to wish you guys all a happy holidays and thank you. Our next webinar will be in February of 2026.